This is the air. That is the glorious sun. That pearl she gave me, I do feel it. And see it. Whew. Though it is wonder that enwraps me thus, yet 'tis no madness. Where's Antonio then? I couldn't find him at the Elephant, yet there he was. And there I found this credit, that he did range the town to seek me out. His counsel now might do me golden service. For though my soul disputes well with my sense that this may be some error, this accident, no, this flood of good fortune so far exceeds all instance, all discourse, that I am ready to distrust mine eyes, wrangle with my reason that lends me to any other truth, but that I am mad. Or else the lady's mad. But if that were so, she would not be able to sway her house, command her followers, to take and give back affairs with, and then dispatch with such smooth, discreet, and stable bearing as I perceive she does. There's something in it that is deceivable. But here the lady comes.
Hi, I'm Genevieve Swift and I am an actor, and I'm lucky enough to have been asked to work on the Intercultural Shakespeare project that Terra Nova were running, and I had great fun working with Andrea on the project. The speech I chose for the project was a speech delivered by Sebastian in Act 4, Scene 3 of The 12th Night. I had a real difficulty selecting what I felt was an intercultural speech to begin with. I really wanted to do the intercultural element of the project justice, and I struggled with how I was going to be able to do that with the confines of the current situation of lockdown that we are in, that I couldn't physically work with anybody else. And I then looked at speeches that might be Shakespeare looking at different cultures, and none of them, although there are plenty, none of them really said for me what I felt that I wanted to contribute to this project. So I had a long conversation with Andrea and eventually settled on Sebastian's speech, Act 4, Scene 3, because it chimes with my experience of interculturality throughout my life, and that is the sort of dissonance in my head between the culture that I was born into and the cultures that I have found myself living in throughout my life. I spent my early childhood and my first school years in school in Saudi Arabia, well, just off the coast of Saudi Arabia. I then moved back to England and had the fact that school had moved on and was slightly different. So although the the population culture was the same. I was having to play catch up with a culture that I wasn't familiar with because I'd started school in a different country. Later on in my life, I lived for quite a long time in Australia, which I had expected to be culturally very similar, apart from the weather. And then when things weren't quite what I was expecting there, I had to sort of do a bit of a brain shift. But the main reason for choosing this particular speech and the way that I chose to stage it, surrounded by red, white and blue bunting, was to evoke the 12th of July, 12th night. And when I first moved to Northern Ireland, which was supposed to be only for 6 months, 13 and a half years ago, people were talking about 12th night, and I assumed, with my knowledge of my cultural background, that 12th night was in January, which is a sort of 12th night after Christmas, in my experience. But actually they were talking about the 12th night, the 12th of July. And sort of when I got round my head round that, and people explained to me that it was a commemoration of a battle, and then there were bunting and flags everywhere, and in my experience buntings and flags were sort of village fete, and then I saw lots of crowds and lots of people getting together, and I kind of expected a sort of village fete atmosphere, and living on Sandy Row as I did at the time, I got a very, very different experience from what I was expecting. I didn't get the village fete at all, and for me, this speech where Sebastian thinks he knows what's going on, in that he thinks that he has come onto an island and nobody knows him, and it's his job to find out everything. When people start recognizing him, and not only recognizing him, but calling him by name and offering him love tokens, the pearl that Olivia gives him, it's a very confusing experience for him, and it doesn't fit cognitively with what he's expecting. So that was the sort of closest to my intercultural experience that I am living through at the moment, being an English person living in Northern Ireland. When I was tackling the monologue from Sebastian in Act 4, Scene 3 of 12th Night, I had to fight really hard against my natural instincts to be able to do this monologue justice. The monologue is all about somebody who is completely confused and trying very hard to have a little bit of a brain shift between what he thought he knew and what he is now discovering, that all the things he's now discovering he doesn't know, and trying to make sense of them. And he's also in the process of wondering whether this lady that he has just met and thinks is absolutely gorgeous but has only just met her, he's wondering whether he is mad because she seems to know him extremely well and has given him a love token of a pearl, and he's talking about bringing the priest to be married to him, and he's like, well, hang on a minute, I've only just met her. Am I going mad, or am I missing something, or what? In delivering the monologue, I had to really focus on the struggle between what he thought he knew and the confusion of what he now realizes he didn't know, and the fact that he is besotted. He thinks he's in love, but he's also trying to sort of reel himself back and think, well, hang on, this can't be real. As an actor, I have a tendency to make decisions about a character, and therefore make decisions about the way that they speak and their intonation, and then learn the lines and deliver them in that set intonation. But because there is so much confusion being conveyed within this speech, I really wanted to work very hard at not making decisions to begin with about how the speech should be delivered, and therefore not falling into my sort of set pattern of delivery, but making sure that, as Shakespeare originally intended, the lines felt fresh, and they felt like they were brand new thoughts that this character was only just having for the first time. So I played around a lot with different ways of saying each line according to the different moods that I thought Sebastian might perhaps be in. So I discovered really then about the monologue particularly, and my delivery of it, how many hundreds of different ways words can be said by people just as they would be in normal everyday life, and just how clever Shakespeare has been about the ways that those lines could be interpreted by a different actor, or as it were in real life, a different character in a different situation, and they might be interpreted in a completely, and therefore delivered in a completely different way. So it was just quite fun for me to sort of play around with what Shakespeare might have intended, or what I, as an actor, have chosen that he did intend.
What will change about the way you approach Shakespeare going forward?
As a youth and community director, I have worked on hundreds of Shakespeare projects for the last decade or so, with hundreds of different diverse community groups. And so I sort of felt...
What will change about the way you approach Shakespeare going forward?
As a youth and community director, I have worked on lots of projects looking at Shakespeare with lots of different culturally diverse participants. But actually looking at it from an intercultural perspective as an actor was something that I really enjoyed, and was something that I hadn't had to do in my professional career to date. When I first started the project, I was really excited to be working with people physically from different cultures to my own background, and then obviously with the restrictions of lockdown, to be actually physically in the same room as them was not possible. I did use the opportunity to speak to a lot of friends and colleagues who do have culturally diverse backgrounds, and their tips and their hints and their suggestions even of what speeches I should do really informed my practice on this particular project, and also gave me a bit more of a glimpse into how I might use their suggested techniques moving forward. One that I found particularly useful was allowing myself to push myself to the limits of my portrayal in a rehearsal space, making things far, far bigger than perhaps I normally would, or making things far more over-emotional, or taking them really, really tiny, and just exploring the limits in both directions, the boundaries of how I might be able to say a particular word or a particular line, or deliver a particular piece of speech, and then to be able to either push that as far as I can and keep it there, or take a certain element of that over-exaggerated, over-emphasized, and hang on to that particular moment, but pare the rest completely away. So maybe just one word really punches in the sentence, or it's a look, and to really, really push myself, rather than taking a more safe, what I would call a natural delivery, is something that I need to do a lot more of now. I've discovered that as a technique. It's been so much fun working with Andrea and Terra Nova, and I'm really, really pleased and proud to have been asked to be part of the project. I definitely will look at Shakespeare speeches in a slightly different way from now on, and I would love to work with Terra Nova in the future.